We've all been there, right? You're watching a project just completely go off the rails. Budgets explode, deadlines fly by, and it's just chaos. But what if I told you it's almost never just bad luck?
Yeah, more often than not, it's really a failure to see what was coming right at you.
But here's the good news. You can absolutely stop losing projects to these predictable failures. Today, we're going to break down the exact framework that helps you do just that.
It's a simple, repeatable, 5-step process that really transforms that feeling of chaos into a feeling of control. It helps you systematically find, rank, and deal with threats before they can actually derail your work.
So here's our game plan. We'll start by digging into the problem, walk through each of these 5 steps, and then we'll see what it actually looks like to be in control.
So what even is risk? It's not just some, vague feeling of dread. Let's get a really clear definition.
Okay, so according to the National Institute of Standards and Technology, risk is basically a function of 2 things. First, the negative impact of an event, and second, the likelihood that it'll even happen. In other words, you got to think about both how bad something could be and how likely it is to happen in the first place.
So, this brings us to step 1, which starts by asking what might be the single most important question in all of project management.
Yup, that's it. What could stop this project? This is all about brainstorming, getting every potential threat, every uncertainty out on the table before they morph into these huge, full-blown problems. You're basically trying to see into the future by looking at your project from every possible angle. A really great way to start is by grouping potential risks into categories like these. Are there money threats? Timeline threats? What about people-related threats? This kind of structured thinking really helps make sure you don't miss a whole area of potential problems.
Okay, so now you've got this long list of all the things that could go wrong. You can't fix everything at once, right? So this next step is all about figuring out which risks need your attention right now.
And this right here, this is your secret weapon. It's called the risk matrix. You plot each risk based on its likelihood and its potential impact. Anything that lands up in that top right red zone, that's your top priority. Stuff in the bottom left green zone, well, you keep an eye on it, but it's much less urgent.
Now, there are 2 ways you can do this. Qualitative analysis is the fast and subjective route, perfect for a first pass using simple labels like high, medium, and low. Then you've got quantitative analysis. This is for your biggest threats, and it uses hard numbers, like actual dollar amounts or days of delay, to give you a much more precise picture.
And the math behind it, it's super simple. You just multiply the score for probability by the score for impact. That gives you a final risk score, and boom, it's crystal clear where you need to focus your energy first.
So once you know your top priorities, you need a game plan, and you've got 4 main strategies for how to handle a risk. You can choose to avoid it, mitigate it, transfer it, or accept it. So for a really critical risk, you might just avoid it by changing your project plan altogether. For a medium one, maybe you mitigate it with some extra quality checks. You can transfer financial risk by buying insurance. And for a tiny little risk, you might just accept it and move on. The right choice always depends on the risk's priority.
Now, this whole process isn't a one-and-done thing. Not at all. These final steps are all about creating a living document and just staying vigilant.
So you're going to document everything in something called a risk register. And see that owner column? That's probably the most important part. Assigning a specific person to each risk, that is what turns a plan into actual action. It creates real accountability. And finally, you monitor. As the ISO 3100 standard points out, this is about constantly checking how things are going against your plan. Why? Because projects and their environments are always changing. A risk that was low priority last month might suddenly become a huge priority next month. Your job is to just keep watching.
So after all this, what's the big result? What's the payoff? Well, you get to move from a state of reactive panic to one of proactive control.
The whole goal is to move from a risk profile that looks like the chart on the left, full of all those red and yellow flags, to one that looks like the one on the right, where the threats have been systematically managed and the overall risk is nice and low.
Look, this framework doesn't promise you a project with 0 problems. That's not realistic. What it does promise is that you'll be prepared for the problems that do show up. It's really the difference between being surprised by a storm and having already built a shelter. By applying this 5-step analysis, you're not just avoiding risk, you're mastering it. So, let me ask you, What's the first threat in your project that you're going to conquer?